afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our final session of our two-day event. I am here to interrogate the gentleman to my right. I will also, I'm sure, slide some of my own opinions into the interrogation, so it'll be a balancing act for me. I'm going to start with a bang, which is, there's been obviously a lot of discussion about gold and a lot of fairly bullish outlooks for the yellow metal. So let's start with the straightforward question of where do you think the gold price is going to be at the end of 2020? I know, right? You guys wanted me to ease in. I'm not easing in. There's no easing here.
Yeah, I'm just hoping for the 1675, 1725 gold price. I think that really is going to do a lot of good things for us. And that can happen with the topic of negative rates. That's going to be the driver, and I think that'll push us to that level. It'll be very good for all these majors who are going to be making lots of money, and that money's going to start flowing down into these good juniors and the buyouts. That's going to be very good for our market. So to get above that level and go to a new high, I think we need a major catalyst, like a collapse of like a new AIG or a Deutsche Bank collapse or something like that. But you know, that's outside the realm of, possibility to forecast. So for next year, that looks really good to me.
John? You can just give a number if you want, although I know short answers and John don't really go together.
$2,100 at the end of
next year?
Wow.
Chen?
Well, I'm happy to see gold is within 1,400 and 1,500 because gold miners, after this downturn, actually are very lean, and they can generate a lot of cash flow. And once their balance sheets start to build up, they will be more and more MMA, which will be very beneficial to junior. Of course, the higher the better.
The measured upside target from the recent breakout for gold is about 1,700, so that would be my guess. I will say, though, that I think the larger stocks are going to lead the gold price higher. If we are in an environment where the stock market is rising, then that is better for the gold stocks. And I don't want to say it's bad for gold, but you're not going to see a rip-roaring bull market in gold if the stock market is also going higher. So I'm more keen on the gold stocks leading this next move.
I guess I'm going to take the under and say 1,600. I'm hoping for more than that, but I don't see a specific set of circumstances unfolding yet that'll produce it, which isn't to say one won't start unfolding tomorrow. I think if the market rolls over, Wall Street that is, which I do think is going to happen by then I would be moving my upside target higher. But I'm waiting to see the U.S. economy roll over. I was expecting a recession to start this year. It doesn't look like it's going to, although I don't think I'm going to be too far off in my guess, since the latest GDP Now numbers I've seen are 0.5% for Q4. So it's getting a little bit stinky out there.
That's not right. Jordan's number was 1,700. Was that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just check in on this 1 year from now. We should do that, actually. Okay, I will get back to gold, but just to diverge off the bat, because I want to get this question over with, there's been a lot of focus on gold. I think almost every company here has been a gold company, almost. Is there another metal out there that you like over the next 12 months? Precious metal, platinum, palladium, or nickel, graphite? Is there anything else out there that you like this year, this coming year? Oh, sorry. Right, I was supposed to answer myself. I'm in line with Jordan. I think 1,700. So upside without, I was going to follow up that question with what the greatest risk to the upside or downside was, but most of them answered that with their number, so I didn't follow up with it. But yes, I think absent any large event of the type that was mentioned there that we can't forecast, I think 1,700 is my number. So yes, other metals that you're interested in, that you're paying attention to for the next year. I think we all love copper in the long term, but that's not what I'm talking about this year.
I don't really have another one myself, honestly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, definitely for me, no base metals, but I would take a look at platinum because the palladium platinum are sister metals and they typically switch when the car companies retool their equipment to take the cheaper metal that they can use either. Platinum might be a good run. It's precious metal though.
Yeah.
So in the last few years, the market's been whipsawed by metals like cobalt going from $10 to $40, vanadium from $8 to $50 and back again. And I'm looking at palladium, and companies are reviving these prospects, but they're not getting that sort of crazy inflow of money. And so the question for me is, if palladium stays here where it is, that's the key. Is this the new long-term price for palladium? And when will the market say, we got to start developing palladium deposits that work at 1,700 palladium and 900 platinum? And in projects outside of South Africa, the palladium grade tends to be higher than the platinum grade. So I kind of like what's shaping up, and that would be sort of the metal, but not because I expect it to go to $3,000 an ounce or anything like that.
But just because the economics are different and more exciting, yeah, with palladium at a new level.
And it's going to be 4 years or so before Norilsk has its big expansion done, so there's going to be, a shortage of palladium supply for a few years.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully, people don't listen to that and say, oh, we better avoid palladium. Hopefully, they just ignore the fact that when Norilsk is working properly again, palladium prices will come down.
Right. Chen?
Yeah, I concur. Actually, I was in palladium and rhodium, I think, a few years ago, and I'm completely out. But I like platinum a little bit more at current price because, exactly as Greg said, the platinum and palladium can replace each other. Right now, there's a very significant replacement in the diesel cars that you can replace the palladium with platinum because platinum is so much cheaper. They used to use platinum as a catalytic converter, and they found a cheaper metal called palladium, so they switched to palladium. Gasoline has a little bit technical challenge because it's a higher temperature. But I think there's a lot of car makers, they don't want to invest because they are not sure this can persist. The gap between platinum and palladium can persist so long, but it does. So as John said, if palladium stays this high, platinum could be interesting, and then there always a threat for South Africa. I have my friend here, they're telling me South Africa can go through a very difficult period, and platinum, South Africa is the largest platinum producer. So anytime we can see just big spike in platinum, maybe on par with palladium.
I would say if there's no recession next year, I think commodity prices at large could go modestly higher. I think it would be led by the energy commodities, though. I'm less keen and less knowledgeable about the base metals. With respect to that area, I would say that coming out of the next downturn and the next recession and bear market, I think that's when base metals will really be ready to rip higher big time, and at that point, that's when relatively you'd want to be in base metals instead of precious metals. But for the most part, for now, I think the outlook for precious metals is better.
Fair enough. They all stole my answer. I mean, I suggested it in the question, so I kind of gave it away, but platinum and palladium are the ones I'm interested in, and rather than trying to choose one from the other, I think what I'm interested in is deposits that have both of them, projects that have both, because then you don't need to make the choice. You don't need to try and decipher whether car makers are going to start substituting palladium for platinum. You just go for projects that have both so you can profit either way. Okay, I'm going to take this question's a little bit different. And I think there's hopefully a bunch of different ways that it can be answered, but it's an interesting sector that we're involved in the way that it works and in all the different inputs and outputs. If there was one thing that you could change about our sector, about junior mining or exploration or dissemination of information or how investors have access, or if there was one thing you could change about this space or up to the producers, what would it be? What would you like to see different in how the gold or mining space operates? they might need a moment for this, because questions on panels are always the same, and this is like left field.
Oh, no, I'll take that one. I just had this discussion last week with somebody who used to run quite a few conferences, and the disappointing thing that I think's happened is I'd love to see the regulators get together, because they've choked off our industry in many ways for allowing all investors to have access to these markets. And I know for U.S. investors, we've lost that retail base we used to have because they can't get involved with private placements anymore. It's too difficult to try to, and none of the U.S. brokers will take a cert from a private placement. And it's just, a lot of U.S. investors just kind of gave up with this market.
Yeah.
So I put that on some of the regulators who have really choked that, and I'd like to see that change to allow more access.
I think that's a good point, actually. One development I was happy to see, and you and I talked about this before your personal conference, I guess we'll call it, and I suggested you should be pressing companies to use the existing shareholder exemption, which still is kind of a tricky exemption, because obviously someone's supposed to be an existing shareholder, and the broker is supposed to confirm that. But I just think the whole accredited investor thing is a bit ridiculous. I mean, I appreciate what they're trying to do. I suppose at some level their hearts are in the right places, but when you think about what the actual effect of the accredited investor rule is, basically, at the end of the day, when you strip away all the other bullshit, what is having the accredited investor rule imposed on you and not being an accredited investor means you don't get the warrant and I do. That's what it means. Yeah. Because you can turn around 5 minutes later after you refuse for replacement, buy 100 times as much stock in the open market and lose money right along with me. You just won't have any warrants to show for it. So I'm really not sure, I know what they were trying to do, what they were thinking, but I don't think that's the net effect. All they've done is made it, they've created a tiered market, which I don't think is helping anybody, honestly.
I figured accredited investors would come up in this conversation.
In my talk, I talked about the share collective as a way of enabling investors to think monetarily about outcomes and gamble intelligently rather than just be momentum chasers. But that's a bigger long-term project. I think the thing that should be changed tomorrow is remove the existing share part from that $15,000 exemption and allow anybody out there to do 15 grand per company per year investment and streamline it, not have like some 50-page document that you're supposed to send back. Have it all fixed online so that when the company opens up, and it's first come, first served, not this BS they have now of saying that if enough existing shareholders apply, the money you wired in will be cut back, we'll have to wire it back, and it's going to be prorated. That is absolute nonsense. This thing is designed to not work, and people need to stand up and protest and say, just have a simple first come, first serve 15,000 or non-accredited investor exemption, because the Americans are not going to change their rules, their blockade against Canadian equities. So the money coming into these juniors has to come from the Canadian base. Well, we'll get the Americans to chip in by selling it after we clip the warrants.
That's the tiering John wants. Chen?
Well, I concur. It's very hard, being American, very hard to invest in the Canadian junior market. We have a legend. Every time it costs us money just to remove it. And then for us, free trading has to come later than you, because it takes us a long time to at least a few days to remove the legend. And then certain brokers require you to, if you remove legend, you have to sell all your share. That's crazy. So I hope there's some creative ways in the financing, and as well as how financing is done. Sometimes when the stock suddenly drops, they're doing a financing, right? I mean, they always worry. So there's some transparency, and also make it easier for American to participate in the financing, some creative way. And second, I really want to emphasize, it's very hard for American to trade Canadian stock, very penny stock. Right now, most of the American discount broker have zero commission. Okay, zero. They really don't pay anything to trade American listed stock. For the Canadians, you have to go through pink sheet, which inherent have at least 2-3% markup because of the currency exchange. So I hope there are some certain ways, because Canadian broker can trade American stock, right? Why can't the American broker just trade, Canadians, but not, without going through all the pink sheet? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing I really want to see to change. Otherwise, for us, any junior, we have to hold it, and then there's less liquidity coming to Canadian market. Thank you.
But there are brokerage firms like Interactive Brokers, which has now really lowered their minimum price that you need, where you can directly trade on the Canadian exchanges and not be ripped off by the pink sheet people.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem with Interactive was the fee is pretty high. They charge penny per share or something. Compared with you Canadian, we are second-class citizens, seriously. So, and then Interactive, because I own Interactive, and they do not take cert. They do not take certificate. And then they do not remove legend. So if you want to participate private placement, you have to go to those full service broker and then charge a lot of money. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add. These guys said it all.
Fair enough. Certainly, I would have, gotten into these topics, Americans and the accredited investor status. I think the other, it's not a regulatory change, it's not a specific thing, but we're at a stage right now in the sector where a lot of the more nefarious characters aren't very active because it's been a slog and they don't like slogs, and so they've been elsewhere doing their thing. And I wish that there was some way that we could collectively work together to keep it that way. And I know in previous cycles there have been various people, various analysts or bankers at different investment banks who've, for example, kept a list of people. And, if an executive at a company was ever involved with, a paid promotion that was bad, ever did anything that we all recognize was something that shouldn't have been done, they would go on the list. And then, then you could, even if you didn't know the team, you could at least have some backstop to go and check. Because it's impossible to know everyone. It's a small sector, but it is impossible to know everyone. And we've all made mistakes with teams that we thought were more honest and trustworthy than they were. So I wish there was some way of working together to be more aware and able to avoid the scumbags.
The short selling too, could there be some rules about some of the wicked short selling that we see at times that
Right.
beat up certain stocks for certain uncouth reasons, let's say?
Yeah,
I don't know how you do it, but
target those stocks, and the stocks are the victims at that point. I'm going to now ask each person an individual question instead of everybody answering the same question all the time, because that can get a little repetitive. So Eric, you're right beside me. I read everything you write, Eric. And Eric hardly ever follows stocks, at least initiates on stocks that are more advanced, that are, have a resource and are growing it, let alone that are building a mine. Why are you so into discovery stories?
I think that's just the end of the business that I was always in. Before I started the newsletter, my late brother and I had an exploration company where we would do the field work. I mean, it was mainly him and his crews doing the field work. I would occasionally get dragged out when we were short, but I was mainly there to do the money side of the business. I've always loved the discovery aspect of this business. I mean, it's one of the few sectors in the economy where someone can literally create something from nothing. There's very few sectors that really have that sort of discovery appeal. I think it's the same thing that draws people to, biotech and things like that, like basically discovery sectors. I just find that part of it more exciting. I mean, I do have development level stocks that I follow. I mean, I recognize that subscribers some of them, that's their preference. You know, I try to find things in the bottom of the little sine curve that are moving towards production, but I do love exploration stories, and it's not, you know, it's not a surprise if you take a look at the companies that I invited to this MIF. I mean, you look at those 4 companies, I mean, one of those more advanced has a big resource now, but it started off sort of as it wasn't really a discovery play. We knew there was going to be a resource there, but the other ones they're all discovery plays. They're all companies working off new discoveries, and in some cases, discoveries they made. I just think that's the exciting part of the business. Plus, it does give you some protection from metal cycles. The thing with discoveries is if someone makes a world-class discovery, and very few discoveries, including very few of the ones I follow, are going to turn out to be world-class discoveries. They're not that common. But if you do find one, you're really insulated quite a bit from the vagaries of the metals market. I mean, the simple truth of the matter is somebody pulls a huge discovery hole in the gold space, no one's going to give a shit whether the gold price goes up or down $100 in the month after that or the 6 months after that. If they can keep pulling discovery holes, that stock can build a huge amount of value regardless of what the metal they're drilling for is doing.
Greg, there's been a lot of bullish outlooks over these last 2 days, but I think Greg is the most excited of anyone that I've seen in the space for a while. He sort of vibrates every time you talk to him about this stuff. So I guess, can you capture, I mean, you've been doing this for many cycles, and you're the most excited you've ever been.
Yeah.
So why is that?
Yeah, I have from 2 perspectives. First, I think this long-awaited super bull market, from my perspective, has been so long in the making. It could have happened at multiple junctures, but this whole negative rate deal for me is really the key that's going to change things. That it just, on so many fronts, it's the, you know, the declining petrodollar. It's the dollar's been in trouble, but is supported as the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry. And I just see all these factors finally coming together, and it's really going to launch us. But this particular conference, I was just upstairs on the phone talking with one of my business partners, telling him how excited I was about the companies that are here. In this July coming up, it'll be 20 years since I've been a newsletter writer. And like Eric mentioned, I love the treasure hunt of this. I love going on the site visits over the years. I used to go with Eric's brother David. He was always so much fun to go with. He loved the treasure hunt too. We'd be out with these top-notch geos looking at this stuff, right? But anyway, the point I wanted to make, and the point I was making to my business partners, was I've never seen a time, and it's probably because the market has been so bad for us that, we mentioned quality, but I think the companies have listened, and the offerings are incredible. I don't think I've ever been at a show where I've seen more wonderful companies with great offerings, great teams. They're doing all the right things because they know it's such a discerning investor. They're only going to invest in the best of the best, and we're getting that. And it's happening at a time where we're getting an incredible opportunity in the next 5-6 weeks to buy this stuff dirt cheap, right before, I think, timing-wise, it's all about timing. I think a big run in the precious metals is coming, and I'm excited.
In case you didn't know.
So you're positive then?
Yeah. Okay. So big smile on my face.
Greg, what was the price you gave for gold by the end of next year? Wasn't that 1,700 or something?
Yeah.
It's not that bullish.
Okay, John, you are all about informed investors. That's a real driver for you. If everyone who's here could leave with one additional investing skill or question that they ask in this space as they're approaching investment opportunities, what would it be? One additional thing that they knew to look at, knew to ask, knew to question, what would it be?
This is the investor asking the company.
Yeah, this is like if every investor here could leave with one new tool in their kit when they're trying to make decisions, what would it be?
It's what is the size of the prize that you are hoping to deliver? Like how big? And of course the companies can't do that, right? But help us understand what sort of target, how much tonnage, what sort of grade range do you need, and, have your little back of the napkin economic geology thing, DCF. Okay, if we deliver it, it would be worth, say, $500 million, and then, of course, it's just a target, so it gets to be, 2.5% to 5% of that, but that way I can see, okay, they're going after either a Mickey Mouse little 100,000-ounce vein, or they're going for something that could be $1 billion prize, and I can place an intelligent bet, and also related to how the market's also pricing it at the moment. Is the market overly enthusiastic, or is it pessimistic? Is it like a really good value? That size of the prize question is what everybody should be chasing after. And we got to figure out how the companies can help us get an answer to that without telling us a number that'll put them in jail.
Yeah. Yeah, in case you're wondering, they're not actually allowed to specifically answer that question. So don't be offended if you go out there with a beer in your hand, and don't break it over somebody's head if they go, I can't answer that question. Technically speaking, legally, they're not supposed to.
Yeah. And as newsletter writers, we're always doing our back of the envelope calculation.
Yeah.
There's so many envelopes in our offices, it's weird. Chen, you're not specifically a mining investor. You're certainly not a gold bug in the sense that, using the name, that label, as is often used in our space. You look at a lot of other areas. Why then, why do you look at gold altogether? Why is it one of the 3 sectors that you follow when there's such a wide range of opportunities? And then why right now are you sort of returning focus to it after a hiatus?
Yeah. Well, for me, I believe eventually gold will go much, much higher. Okay, I believe, the 5-digit gold, it should happen. It will take some time. It takes some time. And so while I'm waiting, right, there was a bear market, and I told my subscriber to start selling gold miners in 2012. So, and now it's getting back. So you avoid the downturn, and then you can try to profit as much as you can from the upturn. So I also have all the different sectors. I have a gold and a biotech, of energy, so I can look at it, and then I can see if you're in the sector, you can feel it, see which sector is the best to put the new money in. Right, so my goal, again, is manage my family's asset, especially my wife's account. It's very important, more important than my own account. So, so I want to be very careful, and so to make the account looks good. And so that's why I don't, in the past bear market, I saw so many investors got wiped out. I really feel very bad for it. And fortunately, I survived, and I'm now looking very actively, seeing the opportunity in this space.
Jordan, you come at this space from a different angle, a somewhat different angle than the rest of us. Can you differentiate for me? Clearly, you use technical analysis for the gold price, and I follow what you write on that. How can investors, or how do you think investors should apply technical analysis to junior mining stocks? What are the advantages? What information does it provide? Especially, some stocks are so low liquidity, but then you have major companies that fit the bill more easily. And what risks are there in the approach?
Well, one thing I want to note about analyzing the gold price, I also look at fundamentals because, at least in the last year, 18 months, the best call I made was fundamentally related, where I said it's not to take a victory lap, even though it is, but I did say that, when the Fed shifts policy and cuts rates, that's when, precious metals will turn. And so that was a fundamental call. So I'm always thinking about, at least from a macro perspective, I'm always thinking about fundamentals, what's going on with the yield curve, real interest rates, what's the stock market doing. So I factor that in along with pure technical analysis. With respect to juniors, you made a very good point, which is the volume is really important. So if there's not the lower or lesser amount of volume there is, then I don't know how you might read things correctly as far as the chart, but it might not always play out that way because there's other important things to think about, like what's the share structure? The chart doesn't tell you, okay, they did a financing and in 4 months from now, shares are going to hit the market. The chart doesn't tell you that, okay, the stock went over 25 cents. The technicals say it should go to 50 cents, but if there's warrants at 25 cents and they have to exercise soon. So like those are the factors with juniors that are almost more important than the chart. Like you need to think about share structure, how tightly is the stock held, how much do insiders have, warrants, things like that. And so I mean, when you're looking at the charts of more illiquid juniors, more smaller juniors, like a lot of the ones we have here, I would just keep things really basic. Just look at the chart, is the stock going, is it trending higher, is it trending sideways? You can throw a 200-day moving average on there. You can, and then you can compare how it's performing versus the sector. So that's something to keep in mind. So with really small juniors that don't trade a lot of volume, with respect to the chart, keep it as simple as possible. And one thing, and also with charting in general, try and avoid, because anybody now can put a chart on the internet and they're a technical analyst. The more bizarre lines and curves and things like that are on the chart, run away from that. I mean, the best technical analysts, they keep it simple. They're just studying the price, moving averages, how is it performing relative to the sector. So those are the things that I would keep in mind. And again, more so than the chart for some of these more illiquid juniors, share structure, when are shares going to hit the market, warrants, things like that are, as you guys know, extremely important. And you can't read that just from looking at the chart.
Don't you guys think he should moonlight as a sportscaster, a newscaster or something?
Yes. All right. I am going to get to the point where I ask you the question that we always finish with, which is one stock to buy today. So not, one that performed really well last week, because that already happened. So one stock to buy today, could be here, could be not here. You can answer in whatever order you would like.
I'm not going to do one, right? Yeah.
Eric's going to give us 3.
Okay.
John's
I'm
going
to
to
do that. Like by now you should know that that's what I'm going to do.
If some is good, more is better.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. And I'm going to keep it simple and not just for the obvious incestuous reasons, but I'm going to name the 3 stocks that I invited here, because that is in fact why I invited them here. One of them is Aston Bay. I suggest people look at that. I mean, one thing I noticed today that was, and I think Tom noticed it too, and it was kind of interesting, was how many people that came up to talk to him that really hadn't looked at the Virginia project at all. I mean, they're still thinking of Aston Bay as being the copper project, and none of it, which is a good project, but it's not something they're going to have any focus on whatsoever in the short or immediate term. It's all about the project in Virginia. And I think it's worth noting, I'm not going to name any names, but it's worth noting that 3 or 4 geos came up to me after Tom's presentation and just sort of went, that's a ridiculously good set of intercepts for what was a 900-meter drill program. When you think of it as being a 900-meter drill program, it's kind of crazy how good those numbers were for something that's essentially a new discovery. I had essentially the same comments made to me about one of the other companies I invited, Pan Global, which was a 500-meter drill program.
Wow, tiny.
And guys that know VMS are like, wow, the guy hit it out of the park with 3 drill holes, and that's a great target that he's going to go back to. And the third one is Vizsla, which Greg and I were just talking about. It's a story that should kind of trade where it is, and I suspect it and Aston Bay will both kind of trade where they are for the next little while, because they're both doing financings. So the window is either the financing or the stock that'll probably just trade at this level until the financing's done. Just a great high-grade story. I'm not a silver bug. I only get interested in silver stories if I see real great potential, and they've already released some phenomenal sample results. And there's a lot of target, but there's going to be a lot more. I really like their VP exploration. Charles Funk is a fairly young guy, a very smart guy, and I think he'll do a great job finding ounces for them.
Yeah, for
So
me,
there.
you know, aside from the two companies I invited, Scotty Resources and Max Tech, I like both of those. I'm buying more shares in the market now. But I agree with Eric too. I met 3 new companies today. I was asked to interview companies that I didn't know anything about, which is great. It's always a good way for me to kind of learn about those stories and kind of see if they check my boxes. And I have to tell you, you know, just hearing about Amex today for the first time. They were here in January, and I always try to make sure that I get to at least talk to everybody at the show, and I miss them, you know, and obviously I missed the bus. But that's such a excellent story, and wow. And then Evergold too. I got to interview them for the first time, and of course Kevin, you know, super sharp guy and super successful, and wow, it's one I'm going to be paying attention to. But I agree with Eric. Vizsla is the one that I got to know today that got my attention the most, because any silver project like that in Mexico, I've been to Mexico many times in that area. We arranged to do the site visit here first week of January. Boy, that one sounds really good. And a good silver stock, when silver goes over $20, that thing is going to move. That is going to move. So, yeah.
My job's easy. Only one company of my picks was here, so Nevada Exploration Inc. would be the one that is my favorite right now. And in 1 year, they've cleared a huge milestone in actually showing that their groundwater dots can lead to something undercover. And in this case, the scale and geological architecture does allow one to dream, wow, what if they have uncovered something equivalent to the North Carlin district, where it's not just a 5 million ounce deposit, but something 50, 80 million ounce. So that one, they do need to finance. They are still being shunned by the brokerage establishment and the majors, so they need to get over that hurdle. But they're now ready to do RC drilling that's aimed at targets rather than building a geological framework.
Yeah, I have 4 companies. I brought 4 companies here. The one, Alaska, is on my recommendation list. The other on my watch list. The reason is, you know, I run pretty large portfolio. I'm running like a hedge fund. So for me, liquidity is very important. Alaska has a very good liquidity, and it's highly correlated to silver price. Last time silver, just a couple months ago, silver pop, it went from like 90 cents all the way to $3 US. Okay, went from US. So there's a lot of hedge fund in New York actually focus on that. So the volume very high. So that's kind of very, you know, and they're going to get into production. For me, my personal, I own more Alaska than the other because it's US listed and very good liquidity. But something you can think about, and then the good thing about that, you can get out very quickly because they trade millions of shares per day. The other golden mineral is listed in US. Again, I always favor US listed because it's easier to trade, zero cost, right? And even Interactive Broker, you can trade at zero cost now, so it's great for US stock only. And also the other two are, you know, very interesting for you to watch. They all have drilling results coming out, Dunedin, and as well as what's the next one? Blink up. American Pacific. Both have a very important drilling result come out. So some investor like to, you know, they like to chase the good results, which is you can put those on your calendar. Okay, put them on the watch list. So in general, my experience, if results are really good, the first day you can still buy it. So sometimes if it's extremely good, maybe second day. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
I didn't bring any companies, but I'll offer a comment or two. I will offer a company, but first I'll just say GDXJ. I mean, if you need liquidity, that has a high probability of really doing well. Are we talking about the next 12 months or like the next?
Yeah, and what to buy right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I will say one of my biggest holdings, not here, Defiant Silver. It's been poorly run the last couple of years. It's really cheap right now. It's on the chart. It's coming near a long-term support. They're cashed up, so I don't see any risk that it's going to go that much lower. This coming year, they're finally going to drill some great silver targets. I think, assuming my outlook for the sector is right over the next 12 or 18 months, the stock will triple. If they hit something good, it's a 5-bagger.
He even puts parameters on it. I like it. I will throw mine out there. I wanted to mention Alexco. I don't officially follow Alexco, but I think I get a huge number of questions recently about silver and how to play silver and what to do about how to take advantage of the silver slingshot. That did not work very well. And the extra, the bonus ride that silver can give in a precious metals market. And Alexco offers that in spades. And the fact that they provide such leverage to the price of silver and are coming near to getting into production, it's sort of it looks like a double whammy to me. On the exploration side, like the pre-discovery drilling side, I'll name Precipitate Gold. I'm pretty excited about the targets that Precipitate Gold is drilling in the Dominican Republic. They have been working in the Dominican for many years. Many of you will be familiar with the story from previous MIFs, but the land package that they have now is a different land package, and I think it's a really exciting one. So they're cashed up now, and we'll start drilling soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty excited about a bunch of companies right now, but forced to choose one, I think that one sort of stands out on the list. And I think, my friends, that brings it to a close. So we'll just get Matt. First of all, we should always say thank you to Matt Bennett for organizing the conference and making it all happen.